Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 5.
Welcome in Mississippi Live Weather 5. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Room to Room Weather Center on what is expected to be still a fairly warm evening, a fairly warm Thursday, but all eyes remain on Friday and the potential for severe weather then. All locations in the Mississippi Live Weather viewing area where, again, this is kind of a weird thing for me to start thinking about. Anybody can watch us anywhere on the Mississippi Live Weather app. And we thank all the folks that have downloaded it and told folks to download it. Make sure it's up to date. The coverage area which we are covering here is really for locations Kosciuszko back toward around Winston County, Noxubee County, northward of the Tennessee state line out to the Mississippi River for folks that maybe don't watch us all the time. We will do some coverage outside of that area. We're not the whole state at this point here. Certainly large tornadoes, things like that. We will do additional coverage for some spots, but the severe weather risk for Friday could potentially include an isolated tornado or two. That's one of the main headlines here that we're watching. Damaging winds also a possibility as near record warmth continues. And almost every time we're in January and we're talking about near record warmth, that's a sign that we have a lot of fuel out there for thunderstorms. So severe thunderstorms are possible on Friday. Let's be clear. There are some folks watching us right now that will not see severe weather. How far north and west, in particular in our area here in the northwest part of the state, does that severe weather risk go? That remains the question that we will answer here in a few minutes. Much cooler weather is ahead. An extended forecast. Well, actually, as we hit the 7-day a little later, our meteorologist Gabe Maynor, talked to him a little bit about that. But as we go throughout the first 12 here, as you can see, 62 at 6 p.m., 56 by 9, mid-50s, and then stuck. Today we had dense fog that didn't break up for many locations most of the day. I'm going to look out the window here. Not as foggy as it was even just a little bit ago here in the Room to Room Weather Center, but certainly a lot of moisture out there as we're setting the stage with stronger winds out of the south on the way tomorrow. That'll bring up more in the way of that moisture. Dew point sets at 66 in Ackerman. That's pretty high. Good evening to the folks down there in Choctaw County. Beautiful colors showing up on this camera there. And appreciate the North Mississippi Storm Chasers for working with us here on Mississippi Live Weather with these cameras, kind of partnership that we've developed over the last decade or so. A lot of cloud cover in Tupelo, but we have visibility, which is something we didn't have a lot of the day. Mitchell Cunningham Bowling sponsoring our Tupelo Tower Cam. Look at this number here. That dew point at 57, it's almost 10 degrees difference between Choctaw County and Lee County. And that difference is important. That means there's more instability south, and this will all kind of work its way northward. But how far north? Is Tupelo too far north, which would mean more likely to be excluded from the severe weather threat? That's one of the things we're looking at. Rolling Fork, that dew point not quite as high as it was down in Choctaw County. Makes me think that Choctaw County rating might be just a little bit high. But these high and thin clouds associated with that approaching storm system, and yeah, it's 72 degrees in Rolling Fork. Out in the Delta, where moisture is going to move more freely northward. Mama Justice Doppler radar looking clear, looking dry at this point here as we're kind of on the close zooms at this instant. Just clear air returns as of 5:04 p.m. And all those high and thin clouds that you're looking at here, not just for us, but all across the entire region at this point in time, kind of working their way in from the west. The main upper level system kind of bringing us to more active weather back out there toward Arizona. We have strong winds aloft that will kind of carry again all this moisture. This is Pacific moisture, and to a certain extent this is kind of a leg of the Pacific jet stream, or subtropical jet stream is actually the way to refer to it. And so that's important. Sometimes we get these little legs of the subtropical jet stream. There are extra little waves in the atmosphere that go with those. They tend to be more poorly resolved on our projections, and that's again one of the uncertainty factors that if we're looking at the severe weather threat, and I'm going to show you where it's at in more detail in a minute, and we go, well, maybe it's not as bad. That's one of the reasons we sometimes have questions around that, is when we have little bits of the subtropical jet trying to work in. So again, massive amount of rainfall here, even snowfall back for the desert southwest as we progress throughout tonight and into tomorrow. Gabe, by the way, don't let me get out of this weathercast here without showing that Ole Miss forecast. We'll have that for you. But as you can see, that system kind of passing through, and behind that, they will be cooler back out there for the desert. You can see for us, well, we're still ahead of all the rainfall as we head toward early morning on your Thursday. More active weather, including a severe weather risk on the plains for tomorrow. And that could extend perhaps through Arkansas and into the Mississippi Delta. We will show you that here in a moment, but as we look hour by hour at your forecast for your Thursday, after starting 56, we'll hit 67 by noontime. Rain coverage only around 20%, mainly showers, mainly west. We're 67 at noon and then 72 for the high. Some spots could be even a little bit warmer than that. That's near record levels. That's because of the moisture we have in place. It gives us a starting point, and we will be breezy as well. Look at those wind speeds south, about 15 miles per hour or so. That means gusts up around 20 to 25. So it will definitely be a breezy day. That's one of the things we're looking at coming up here in 60 seconds is where that is the most significant. Also coming up here on Mississippi Live Weather after the break, we will be analyzing the timing and positioning of those storms on Friday. That's as Mississippi Live Weather continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center right after this.
As a bankruptcy firm, Mitchell, Cunningham & Bowling realizes many people are worried about their finances. We're here to guide you through the next steps to restart your life with easy video appointments. New clients don't have to leave home to get information about becoming debt-free. Also, convenient in-office appointments are available at the low cost of $340 upfront for a Chapter 13. You can be on your way to being debt-free. Contact Mitchell, Cunningham & Bowling today or visit our website at mcdebtfree.com. We are here to help you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
Rain and storm coverage on the increase as we go into the next couple of days. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lobhon. Thank you so much for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather. If you haven't taken the time yet, download the app. It's the quickest way to get our alerts and honestly find our stream when we're on for severe weather coverage. Friday is a day we are watching. Let's be clear, this is not a high-end severe weather threat, but there is a risk there, and it involves all the counties that we cover here in the northern part of Mississippi and northwestern Alabama. A level 2 out of 5 risk as it stands right now. At midday today, there was an expansion on the south side there. So the south side was expanded somewhat. That to make room with, I think, will likely be eventually an upgraded risk, probably somewhere in kind of central Mississippi. How far does that extend into northern and eastern Mississippi, and when does that upgrade happen? I don't know that necessarily happens tonight, but there are some indications with the fact that we have some individual storm cells out there by themselves that makes me think that I think a level 3 out of 5 risk becomes a possibility out of this. And again, that comes back to the number of reports. And we do expect that we will at least have some reports of severe weather associated with this. Looking at peak wind gusts, notice Thursday, it's green for everybody, but green means something. Green means 20 to 30 mile per hour winds. And then yes, as this line comes through, and this is an exclusive product you can only see here on Mississippi Live Weather, looking at those peak wind gusts, will you see any of these spots where it's kind of that reddish sort of color there? Those are spots where the wind gusts are expected at peak, in particular when that line of storms comes through, to be in excess of 60 miles per hour, to be at that severe level where it's more likely to cause damage. But if you're anywhere in the red, I think some sporadic damage is a possibility. Here's the takeaways. We kind of look a little wider on this for a moment. The takeaway is this. You see how there's this kind of gap here? Do I have high confidence that you're not going to have damaging storms up here in Hernando, Clarksdale, Oxford, or Ripley? No, I don't. What we are watching is and we're tracking the potential that this will back a little farther to the west, which is something that has happened. If you watched us last night, it was down here a little farther south. It's come a little farther north. So this is Wednesday evening. We sit, 2 full days away from the storm system happening. So if you imagine each time our projections come in, if they're just 10 miles, they come in 4 times a day. If they're just 10 miles different, that's 4 miles, that's 40 miles over the next 24 hours and 40 miles the time after that. well, then that's when you all of a sudden, even just a small difference, gets us all the way back in the northwest Mississippi. So still refining timing because we still have some time before it gets here. School day forecast, there are no issues as far as tomorrow is concerned. We're in good shape. 57, that drop-off temperature, 65 by lunchtime, 71 as we head toward the last bell. If the kids are trying or planning on wearing their amazing new school outfits, that's obviously, the winter variety stuff. That's not something that you're going to necessarily need in this case, as we expect, obviously, it could be near a record high. And most of the showers, very limited in overall coverage. Let's look at Futurecast. And this is, again, the next 12 hours or so. Widespread cloud cover. It remains reasonable. We could, again, have fog tonight. Less likely to have the dense fog than what we had earlier today and this morning, but there will be some of that out there. Most of the dense fog closer to the coast, where there's more moisture. Speaking of moisture, you can see some showers back out here to the northwest, there into Arkansas, trying to cross the Mississippi River. All very light. That's important. We'll zoom out on this here in a moment, but that's a sign, again, we're trying to return moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and it takes some time. So we're in the low 50s in New Albany at 53, 54 Tupelo, 55 degrees in Eupora, 57 for Greenville and Belzona for highs. A normal this time of year is 34, so we're 20 above where we should be. Obviously not quite the record high minimum, record warm minimum temperatures, but clearly we're way above normal. And so looking here at Futurecast, I said we'd go wider. Let's do just that. As we go wider here on Futurecast, what you will see is that storm system back to the north and west. This associated with a severe weather risk out on the plains. You could see some individual thunderstorms, ones that could potentially try to produce damaging wind gusts out that direction, and maybe even a limited tornado risk. We're watching the south side of that for folks out there in Arkansas. The Arkansas Weather Network, one of the sister groups here with, or brother groups, because they're a bunch of guys, Tupelo with the record on the books at 73, 72 in Amory. I'll let Gabe do the forecast on this today. And you know what? I won't blame him. I think it's a good number for tomorrow. But yeah, so close to a record, but not quite to that threshold, with some mid-70s with a little more moisture down there, Belzona, back toward Kosciuszko. So tomorrow is a day where we're ahead of things. And that's important because while we're ahead of things is when we need to start thinking ahead about building our armor. And so the way to do that is just make sure that you have multiple ways to find out about warnings on Friday. Weather call. We'll talk about it in a moment. The Mississippi Live Weather app, if you're watching us on Facebook, this thing is great. You can ask anybody in the chat there what they think of the app. And be honest in the chat what you think about the app, all right? But for any of the folks out there that don't have the app, it's great with the alerts. It gets them there fast. The rain alerts, which weren't so great on the last app, are fantastic on these. Code Red, Weather Radio, a lot of other different ways in which you can stay ahead of that active weather. As we progress through the forecast then, beyond tomorrow though, we do expect that it will include more showers and thunderstorms. So we're prepping ahead for tomorrow. Get that app, and that's the way you can get it. I'm going to leave that down there here for just a moment. As you can see here, there are some showers, all relatively light ones for Thursday evening, and then here are those storm chances by Thursday night. You can show a little more orange out there into Arkansas, a little more as we head toward around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning for locations in that direction. So this is, again, where that limited severe weather threat happens, and you can see we do have a couple isolated storms. Let's go and drop this graphic here in the foreground for a moment. Just give me just a second to pop that back down. So we do show a couple here, 3 o'clock in the morning, heavier, but these would not be tornado producing, not in my estimation. These would be elevated storms. So what does that mean? That means rather than forming with air down at the surface, they form at a layer higher up in the atmosphere, the air where the convergence is and everything that gets them to go, the lift is at a higher level in the atmosphere. That means no tornado threat out of these. Unless something goes dramatically sideways, that's the way this plays out, thankfully. But that's where that overnight severe weather risk is that we were talking about a moment ago there. So low temperatures, low 60s to mid 60s out there for early Friday morning, as we should again be well above our normal. This actually could end up being a record. Gabe, if you're there at the big monitor, I'm going to bring you in for a second. I just real quickly want to know, is that going to be a record warm minimum for that morning? I think, in fact, it is. Right, Gabe?
I would agree with you on that. I have to get the exact numbers on it whenever we're talking about that temperature forecast. But yeah, I mean, we are right at, if not right above that margin for our record minimum low temperature, however you ordered it.
Yeah, record warm minimum temperature. And we're not going to talk about what you have behind you yet. That's coming up at 6 o'clock. Is that?
Sneak preview.
Yeah, or here a couple minutes. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So again, low 60s out there for early morning on your early Friday. That's that moisture coming in, and then here are those shower and thunderstorm chances on Friday. So what we have, kind of the main players here, we do have some lift around kind of associated with this front kind of moving into the area, and most of these showers, again, heavy rainfall, lightning, but we're not talking about severe weather. We're much more interested in this boundary back out there into Louisiana. That's where we're more likely to see severe thunderstorms. So as we're bringing it in a little bit closer here, looking at Futurecast, I'm going to try to make room for everything on here as we kind of push that kind of off the side. And for folks there behind the scenes, in our chats, we will try to answer some questions at the end of this broadcast. We'll make time for that there. So here are those isolated storms, Greenville, Bastrop, back there toward Monroe, Louisiana. One of the things that I'm really interested in is how many of those thunderstorms end up hitting severe limits and have some rotation with them. You'll notice things changed. And that difference there is we've gone to a different model. This is a hybrid I'm showing you here. So I was showing you the HRRR model a moment ago, now kicking over to our strike model. Our strike model is very crystal clear on its thinking. We're going to have more isolated storm development as opposed to just big blobs. Now we do have some of those back here. I'm watching that one there back towards Shreveport and Monroe. Projections in particular, our strike model did a pretty good job of showing this one getting to a level where it could try to produce tornadoes as we go toward Friday. So we're watching that one, and if you're up here in the northwest portion of the state, that's where we're saying that, hey, this still remains a possibility. We'll still see just exactly how far north that one gets. So as we stop this at 1:30, what I can clearly say is we don't have anything on here that looks like it is severe or damaging, at least not at that exact moment in time. But certainly watching those storms back to the west getting closer. So most of these up here in North Mississippi, the fact we have them kind of discrete by themselves, always concerning, but they're not necessarily big enough that they're going to really get that rotation going. So I think that is a good sign on that particular projection. Again, heavy rainfall, lightning, some gusty winds. That one that looked like it was trying to produce a tornado in Louisiana by the time it gets to Greenville is weakening some, but still could prompt tornado warnings. That's part of the reason why, again, we're talking about being prepared and letting y'all know in advance. And then, again, at this point here, we're looking at 4 p.m., mainly heavy rainfall, mainly non-severe, still at 4 p.m. But a couple of these, if this can get some real good inflow there in Amory or that one there closer to Eupora, it's not impossible that we still have enough fuel, what we would call instability, and enough shear at that point to produce one or two of those thunderstorms, at least getting some tornado warnings out of that. Hopefully that's not the case, but that could definitely be the case. I'm much more concerned with these storms down there closer to Jackson and how those try to clip the Golden Triangle. I think that's still the case. You might say, well, why is he ignoring us up here in Tupelo? Do you see how we have all this rainfall here? This is going to cut into the good inflow, for lack of a better way to put it, what the storm wants to eat. This is rain-cooled somewhat, and so that makes it to where even though it might be heavy, it's less likely to produce a tornado. So that's why I'm not concentrating as much on the northern part of the area based on this. But at 6 o'clock, we should have a new look at Futurecast that will have a better handle, hopefully, on this as we get closer. That should become better and better. Obviously, our projections usually get a little better by then. But this is the concern here near Florence and then back there toward Jackson, Ridgeland, Canton, just a little east there. This group of thunderstorms there looks like it could potentially have rotation in a couple different spots, and that would be the section there where I'm looking down here for Noxubee, for Winston County, that maybe we could be talking about a tornado. Highs On your Friday, expected to be in the low 70s to maybe mid 70s out there. Not the record levels you can see above my head, but at least within striking distance of that. Okay, let's finish up here as we look on Futurecast, and I'm zoomed in nice and close, and you'll again see this storm system kind of pretty much right over top of us at that point in time. Again, a difference in class here between these storms. You can see the darker red versus a lot more yellows and oranges farther north. So the cutoff here between that north to south is important, because somewhere, and I don't know if it's right there or it's a little farther north, but at some point in here, those storms are going to become elevated. At this point, I think that Futurecast is close, but I would still say that this one on top remains one I'm going to watch pretty closely here over the next 24 hours or so to see whether or not that moisture can push that much farther north. Let's go and clear that off, but there's obviously one of the big factors here, a big difference between how strong these storms are and the ones farther north. So as we go through the evening, 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock, again, mainly heavy rainfall, mainly non-severe through our area, and more likely to produce tornadoes down south. But I think clipping Noxubee County, it's always Noxubee, always Lowndes, always Pickens counties, I think certainly the more likely spots in my mind to possibly end up seeing this line produce a tornado. I do think it might be just a hint fast, and this has sped up from even what we were looking at that noontime today when we were tracking this. This is coming through a little bit faster, and we said there'd be these ebbs and flows as these projections kind of honed in on something there. But that batch of thunderstorms working its way into Alabama by 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning there as we go into your Saturday, and less unstable air kind of following in behind it there. So as far as the threats are concerned, a brief spin-up tornado does look possible. Certainly, if we were to see something, a more likely chance for tornadoes, as we showed you a moment ago, it's more likely for locations to the south, more likely in central Mississippi, more likely south of Greenville, south of Greenwood, out into Louisiana, and then moving in. Still, we have increased our confidence on that. As we talked about at noontime, there's enough evidence there to increase our confidence level. Strong wind gusts are a possibility. We're at medium confidence on that. Hail, something we're not terribly impressed with. There's a limited hail threat. If we can get one of those individual storms by themselves, they're more likely to produce that, and flash flooding a possibility. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we're going to debut a brand new thing. You've never seen it anywhere. We're calling it the triple threat, and on the same graphic, it will break down in very intimate detail that tornado, that damaging wind, and that hail threat, all layered in hopefully a very understandable way. It's an exclusive here to Mississippi Live Weather. We'll show you that coming up at 6 o'clock. Also want to remind you about Weather Call. Weather Call is basically a phone alert that will let you know if you're in the danger zone. Yes, I know this is great, and the app is spectacular. If you haven't tried it, I recommend you trying it, not just because it's our app, but because honestly, it's really good. And if it wasn't really good, we get rid of it and we get a different one. It really is, it's the best weather app I've ever been able to use, thankfully. But in saying that, Weather Call is better, and here's why. It is a phone call, and as I mentioned, I'm going to say this over and over again, a phone call breaks through the silence. I've had tons of alerts come in during this broadcast. I mean, a lot of you have been commenting, right? Have you heard my phone even once? Occasionally you'll hear it, but I'm able to ignore those alerts. But if my wife called, if somebody in my Do Not Disturb called, it would come through. It breaks through. So that's why it works as a perfect personal alert. It calls you for tornadoes. It calls you back if tornadoes are confirmed. It calls you for severe thunderstorms, and it calls you for major flash flooding. Think what happened in Texas. That kind of stuff. So it is a life-saving alert that it's reasonable. You might go through the whole year and get 0 phone calls, and that's good. That means you're not truly in danger. Weather Call will let you know when you are in that danger zone. As we bring it back in here to the Room to Room Weather Center, here's a look at that 7-day forecast. Again, 30% on that rain coverage as we look toward Thursday. We're 70% for Friday. We're 70 for the high on Friday. Again, near a record high Thursday, near a record high, but still below that on Friday. We're 63 degrees as we look towards Saturday, and then dropping to 46 by Sunday. That is a huge drop. I said we bring in our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard. Let's bring him back in now. So, Gabe, obviously we have that record warm, and then we kind of go the opposite direction with that, as you said a second ago there. So let's talk the records. Let's talk that cold, because obviously it's much cooler, and that happens behind these systems. They just drive the moisture right on out of here.
Yeah, and it's almost reassuring because, you need this unstable air mass like what we have right now in order for severe weather to take place. If winter feels like winter, then severe weather is not going to happen. So luckily for us, winter does finally move back into the forecast heading into next week and some calmer conditions as well. But here's a little hint at some of those low temperatures. This one of our long track models, the American model that we've been talking about all week long for the severe weather threat. Well, now it's bringing in some good news, and that's that cold air as we move into early next week. I told my wife, get the layers ready. It's going to be a cold one heading out for the school day. But what we were talking about a moment ago, this is definitely abnormal for this time of year. As you see, our normals for January, this is of course January 1st, 2nd, all the way through January 10th. Our normals are right around the low 50s for highs and a low to mid 30s for lows. We've not been anywhere near that for the most of the start of January. And as you can see right here, we're close to record high temperatures. I'm going to take a step over here and showcase that to you guys. So right here, we're currently January 7th. So if we go down right here, 75 degrees would be our high temperature on January 7th. And then 73 is our high temperature, record high temperature, should I say, for January 8th. Well, we know it's going to be warm today, it's warm tomorrow, and it's warm into Friday. So potentially a new record being set over the next 3 days is definitely a possibility. But where we expect that new record to really be set is with this record high minimum. And that means those low temperatures being on the warmer side. And as you can see, we're right around, let me get down to 7 real quick. 57 degrees for our record high minimum, and then tomorrow is 60 degrees. So if those temperatures line up how we expect them to, I do expect some new high minimums, record high minimums to be set over the next couple of days. And that record that was set in 1946, 80 years later, finally setting a new one, Matt. It's just abnormal. It's almost uncomfortable for this time of year. I want it to be cold. I want it to feel like January, and we are as far from that as we can be.
Well, in one of the I guess non-scientific ways I can always tell, and maybe you've noticed this at home, and I certainly some other folks have, is when we get this uncomfortably warm after a cold spurt, you kind of get the water that forms on the concrete in the garage. It's more, it's kind of, the concrete sort of sweating. One of those signs. We weren't quite cold enough, I think, this time around, but if we pump it up real quickly after this next one, certainly not something we're overly impressed with. Do we have, you go out 10 days, 12 days, 14 days, anything out there of significant concern? One question someone had, earlier today was snowfall. Even in dreamland, anything out there that far? You're talking about that at 6, aren't you?
We'll be talking about something at 6 for sure, and I think snow fans might have something to look forward to, if everything verifies, of course. This is all the dream world, like you said, so we'll all need to grab our nighties because we're going to be definitely going to bed as we dream about this forecast at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But at 6 o'clock, again, also analyzing a lot of other parts related to this severe weather threat, including breaking down our triple threat. And again, updates every morning, 6:37, 7:30 a.m. Our meteorologist, Maggie McCauley, tomorrow morning, what she will be doing. One of the big questions folks have asked about, are we going to see an upgrade to our risk area? That's something Maggie will have analysis on starting at 6:30 a.m. And then it's a live show again at 7, and a live show again at 7:30 a.m. We have a Roku app. You can put it on the TV just like normal television. Maggie does a spectacular job. One of the best professionals I've ever worked with, and one of the sweetest people as well. You can get the latest updates from her starting at 6:37 and 7:30 a.m. Our next live broadcast this evening is coming up here from the Room to Room Weather Center at 6 p.m. and at 6 o'clock we break out that exclusive triple threat that you only find here on Mississippi Live Weather, as we're looking at those severe weather components, what you're most likely to see. And the very latest, again, on that far extended forecast, Mississippi Live Weather at 6. We will see you then.
March 24th, 2023 was a normal Friday. We knew the weather was not good, but we needed to take shelter, and we didn't have shelter. My husband and almost 2-year-old daughter, Ethan and Riley, they did lose their lives in the storm. We're still recovering from it. We'll always be recovering from it. Matt Lopon cares about the community. He's not just there to collect a paycheck. I feel like Matt Lopon has proven himself trustworthy.